Planning a fishing trip shouldn't feel like a full-time job. With FishingBooker.com, you can find and book the perfect fishing trip within minutes. FishingBooker.com connects you with trusted fishing captains around the world. Booking is fast, easy, and secure, with access to verified customer reviews, loyalty rewards, and around-the-clock customer support. Everything you need to book with confidence is in one place. So head to FishingBooker.com and start planning your next fishing adventure today.
All right, welcome back to the Survival and Basic Badass Podcast with Kevin and Chuck. Today, we're going to talk about shelters. Basically, when I sleep, I like to be warm and not eaten by bears and not laying in a puddle of water. Those are what I look for in a shelter. I don't know, to each his own, right? I also don't like when people come up and like stab me while I'm sleeping. That's another, negative for me. So like a shelter should hopefully, find some way to protect you from those certain things. When you pick out a neat place to like hunker down for the night, there are certain things you need to look at, and it varies on, what's important. Are you building something long term, or are you building something for tonight? Are you on the move? Do you have a tarp with you? A lot of people, when they go in the woods, will carry a like at least a poncho or something like that to have that extra sheet of plastic for shelter building that's going to, do a little bit to help keep you dry and that kind of thing. So that's always important. But you need to look around the area and see, where is going to be a good spot that's good for you. Now, a lot of people like to do their shelters near resources that are available to them. And what I mean by that is like water or food, or, you're going to be, hey, I want to be by where the animals are so I can get some dinner. I want to be, by the creek so I don't have to go far to get water, to get a drink, that kind of stuff. But you also need to think about, all right, is that creek going to rise up when, the tide comes in? Is the, because some rivers are connected to oceans, turns out. Or, is it going to rain and everything's going to come down off the mountain and rise that creek up, that kind of stuff. It's important to be aware of what's around you and what's, going on. Another thing to look out for is like, what's the insect situation going to be there? Is there a bee's nest or a hornet's nest right by? That kind of thing. Just things to look at and be aware of. But with that said, we had a listener, V8 in Portugal, who, said, hey, can you guys talk about shelters? He actually mentioned maybe even stealth camping and that kind of thing. And I hate to say it, we did an episode called Stealth Survival, Hiding Out in the Woods, a while back. So you may want to go back and revisit that if you're looking for the kind of urban hiding and not so urban stealth shelters. We definitely got down into that. But
I think that a lot of that stealth camping is it's really just getting off the beaten trail. If you're trying to hide out, you can hike down a trail that 1,000 people are hiking on every day, and if you go 100 yards off in one direction, you're going to be pretty covered up. You just want to make sure that your fire is not going to be showing. You want to make sure that your tarp is going to blend in, or your tent is going to blend in with the with the foliage and the underbrush. And I think just any sort of survival shelter building can be stealth camping too.
Yeah, well, that's like where that like Dakota Firehole might come into play, or different stuff. Again, you're going to do your setup different for what your goals are. Are you hiding out on the run? from whatever bad guys are chasing you down, whatever, or are you just lost in the woods? Or are you saying, you know what, I'm done with the world and I'm going to go to in the middle of the woods and I'm just going to go be happy and live like, I don't know, the guy with the bear and
Right.
Grizzly Adams. That'd be the
Grizzly
one.
Adams.
And, whatever you want to do. Everybody, your goals, dictate what it's going to be. And again, a lot of times people will do a temporary shelter. And then live there while they're working on their other. You need to be aware of, I know when we were in Boy Scouts, they used to, the big thing was, digging the trench around the tent. And,
right.
If it rained, you did not want the water coming in and where it's going to be. But again, you can kind of look at the weather and see what you're up against. You definitely have different levels of protection that might be required based on the weather and what's going on. And like I said, and on your goals, or are you hiding from someone? What are you trying to avoid? What do you need shelter from? That matters in what you choose. But there are a lot of different types of shelters. And I guess we can kind of just jump right in and see what we can do. Now, most people, when you think of like Boy Scouts and like that, basic shelters, one of the simplest ways is a lean-to. And that's definitely like a key starting point. You had a couple of scenarios with lean-tos, Kevin?
Yeah, now I whenever I go out camping, I always bring a tent with me, a one-man tent or whatever. Bring a tarp with me, paracord. You don't have to be a vagrant. You can bring a tent with you. It's okay to do that. Me, I'm like a dirty hillbilly, so I've definitely slept on the ground without any tent, without any fire, and whatever, it's fine. You're not going to die, but the bugs are going to fucking eat you up, and the temperature at night is going to drop a lot. So even if it's 80 degrees, when you're hiking up or hiking out, you need to plan on it dropping, a good 15, 20 degrees at night. And obviously that's a lot different in different climates. Desert areas is going to drop, 30, 40 degrees at night. And places where it's a little bit chilly, when it's wintertime, winter camping, and it's 25 degrees and you set up your spot, you don't want to end up sleeping on the ground because it's going to get real cold real fast. So the biggest things you want to do is keep the rain off of you, keep the insects off of you, and have some sort of separation between you and the ground. You don't want to be sleeping directly on the ground if you can help it.
Right. Everyone always talks about the camp roll,
right?
Having like that inch thick pad. There's definitely things in nature that you can find.
Right. I usually bring a roll with me, a foam mat if it's going to be cold out. But you can do things like pine boughs. You can pile up leaves, something to make a little bit of insulation between your body and the ground.
Now, I did see, I did some quick research, and there's a company called Duluth Pack that makes a bedroll. Now, it is made in America. However, this bedroll is a piece of canvas for $440. So, some of you big rollers that may be your thing. I don't know.
Yeah, you can also buy a piece of foam from Walmart for $8.99. So, whatever.
It could go either way. Yeah, but this one kind of looks cool. It's got like a little seal, some straps with buckles.
It's got leather straps. Oh, man, the shit looks fancy as fuck.
Yeah.
But
I'm just saying.
Yeah, but if you don't spend a lot of time outdoors, hiking, camping, that sort of stuff, you might not realize how big of a difference it makes to really have that separation between you and the ground. Even if it's something simple, like I said, like piling up some leaves. I know a lot of people talk about the pine boughs. I'm not a huge fan of that because as soft as you think you're making them, and as much as you think you're getting the hard sticks out of there, something's going to be stabbing you in the ass all night. So, to keep that in mind. If that's the only option you got, then that's what you got. But if you can do something to mitigate that before leaving your house and before heading out, you might want to think about bringing something with you. Now, when it comes to basic shelter building, you can do this with some paracord and tarp. And there's about 15, 20 different options. So we'll run over some of the basics with the tarp and the paracord stuff.
All right.
For an A-frame, or for a lean-to, let's start with a lean-to. You're going to want to run a basic guide wire, between, say, two trees. You want it really taut, you want it really tight, and that's going to be your basis for most of the tarp and the paracord shelter building. So with an A-frame or with a lean-to, that's pretty basic. You know what I mean? You're going to tie the one end of the tarp up, and then you're going to stretch the tarp all the way out and down to the ground. And it's real simple to do, real easy. It's not going to separate you from the ground. It's not going to have. It's only going to have one wall. It's basically a windbreak, and it's going to keep the rain off your head. And real easy to do. You can get one set up in about 15, 20 minutes, and you're ready to go. A-frame is similar, except instead of going from, one end of the tarp from the guide wire, you're going to put the guide wire in the middle of the tarp and, bring it down to the ground on each side. Now it's pretty good doing it. That's pretty basic setup. It's not going to be as tall. You're not going to be able to stand up in there. But you're going to be covered on two sides. You can have, a fire right in front of you, and you can stay warm most of the night, doing that, keeping your gear dry and keeping yourself dry. My favorite one to do, it's a lot smaller, but it's basically a C-frame. So what you're going to do is you're going to leave about 2 feet overhanging on your guide wire, and then stretch the tarp out. And you're going to stake it down in the middle, and then tuck the remaining underneath you, so it's laying flat on the ground.
Okay.
That way you have something that's, it's going to keep the insects from climbing up on your face while you're sleeping. It's going to give you a little bit of protection from the ground, and it's also going to give you an overhang on top. Okay. Now, this is really going to keep the rain and the wind off of you, and it's good for setting up a fire right in front. And
it does require a little bit bigger tarp.
Right, and it requires
you to do less space for you,
and some lines out. You're really gonna have to fold it up a little bit. It's like an origami, with tarps. The bigger tarp you have, the better you're gonna be able to do. But if you're going by yourself, a 10 foot by 10 foot tarp should be bigger than what you need.
Right. No, I agree with that.
The Adirondack shelter. That's basically it's shaped like two triangles against each other. So you're gonna have a triangle open, and everything's gonna go down to a point at the end. So you're gonna have 3 walls on that. So you basically want a triangle shaped tarp. So what you're gonna do is you're just gonna fold it corner to corner to make a triangle. And then all 3 of those corners go down to the ground with an opening on the face. It's a little bit more difficult. It doesn't give you a whole lot better protection than any of the other ones, aside of the fact that you're going to have 3 sides enclosed. It's good for, cold weather, but you're also going to be doubling up the tarp, so you're not going to be able to have as big of a space inside the tarp. You're not going to be able to stand up in it, and it's all around, it's just a little bit more of a difficult shelter to build, but it is going to give more protection from the wind and the rain.
Right.
Now, like I said, all your setup is going to really depend on your location, your environment, and the weather. You
It
know,
really does. I mean, you really need to kind of check out some different shelters, look around on images on the internet, get ideas, get inspired. There's so many different things where your environment comes into play. A big one is root shelters when you have a fallen tree and you can use that kind of upturned root.
right,
Um, Again, even just using a fallen tree, using the long shaft of it as part of your lean-to structure or something like that, that's going to come into play. Giant rocks, and also if you're in a really rocky area, you can also build up a shelter with rocks and build
right,
up
right.
some rock walls.
Yeah.
These
Uh,
all are great, but again, they're affected by your environment. Tropical climates, having the big broad leaves and things that you end up out there, bamboo stuff that you have tons of it and you can cut easily, is going to make a big difference. Carrying a knife, having stuff to help out, I mean, even better, like a machete, something like that, where you can really cut down branches and do stuff. But having these tools available to you is going to make a big difference. That's why it's so important to have a bug out bag, or to have the proper gear when you're going out in the woods or things like that, to plan ahead. It's so
right.
important to have the right tools with you that you don't end up stuck. That's why having a tarp is such a huge asset. It's going to make it so much easier to build the shelter if you have a tarp available with you, even if you make it sturdy with the environment, but being able to ensure that it's going to be waterproof and do that kind of thing is going to make a big difference.
Yeah. I think, I think a lot of this, when it comes down to it, really involves you going out, getting outside, and doing some basic shelter building, doing some basic stuff. Even if you're doing it in the backyard, where you can go inside and warm up if you feel like, getting yourself outdoors, and doing some of this stuff. You're gonna see the mistakes that you're making as you do it, and you're gonna be able to correct it. You don't want to find yourself in a bad situation, lost in the woods, and can't figure out how the fuck to get out of there, and you don't know what the fuck to do, and now you're building a shelter for the first time.
Right.
But my number one recommendation is, if you're going into the woods and you're planning on spending the night, bring a fucking tent with you. Bring something with you so that you can take care of yourself. Plan for that shit. And if you get out there and the weather's gorgeous and you have a nice, big pile of dry wood and you can build a nice fire, then you can go ahead and spend 15, 20 minutes and see what you can do about building a shelter. And if it looks like shit, get in the fucking tent. Don't be fucking stupid about stuff. But, there's definitely situations that you can find yourself in where you don't have a tent with you. You don't have something easily accessible to you. And it's important to know how to put something together when you're in an emergency situation, rather than, trying to figure out what the fuck you're doing when you're already short on food and water. And you're,
don't you just go hang out in the cave? Like the caves that are in the woods? The woods is full of them,
all
right?
those caves, all the ones that the cavemen lived in? Yeah, just go find a cave.
They did it for years.
That's
right.
But
that's the thing. Like, you need to be aware of what's around you and, your environment. And like I said, learn to, go camping in your environment. It's different when you're out in the desert and when you're, when you're in the Arctic in the snow. Snow forts sound easy. I know when I did in the Boy Scouts, they have something called the Order of the Arrow. I don't know if they have it anymore, but they that was kind of the above and beyond, I don't know, like secret group, right? So they had their own wilderness survival, and I think it may have been the Wilderness Survival Merit Badge, I'm not sure, but you had to spend the night out in the woods and on your own. And in my mind, I was like, oh, I'll do it in the winter. That'll be way easier because I can make my fort out of snow, and that'll be so easy. And that was so cold. And, that's the thing. And actually, that's where laying the stuff underneath, makes such a difference. Having a camp roll kind of thing underneath there, or, a mattress pad, or, like I said, using some pine branches, something to keep you off the wet ground really makes a big difference. But these are the things you learn by doing. When you go out and you spend the time, that's when you realize what works, what doesn't work, how bad is the cold, how tough is it. When you think, oh, I just have to fall asleep and then, it'll be morning and it'll be over and I won't care. But when it's that cold and you wake up every 5 minutes because you're like, oh God, I'm freezing. Oh God, I'm freezing. And it just kind of goes like that. But, so just practice makes perfect, right?
Yeah. Let's talk real quick about locating, how to locate your site for setup.
Okay.
If you're in the woods and you need to you need to build a shelter, there are a couple of things that you want to look for. If you can find, like Chuck said, the upturned roots of a tree, if you can find something that's going to work as a windbreak, something to keep the wind from blowing on you, something to keep, the rain from blowing into your shelter, whether it's, a rock wall, whether it's a big tree down, or upturned roots, you're going to want to find something that's going to give you a little protection from the environment around you. Second thing you want to do is, before you set up your shelter, make sure you're looking up in the air. Make sure there aren't a bunch of dead branches dangling above your shelter that are going to come crashing down on you while you're sleeping. What do they call that? Widowmakers, right?
Widowmaker, yeah.
Broken branches and things like that are hanging above you. You want to be very conscientious that you're not going to have a fucking disaster in the middle of the night and you wake up with a broken leg and a fucking tree sticking through your stomach.
I guess that'd be pretty terrifying if the big 4-inch thick branch falls down on top of you while you're sleeping and crashes through the tent. And that's not a good way to wake up.
Yeah.
That's about as bad as waking up with Folgers, right?
Oh, come on. But when you go out and you're setting up a shed, and you'll see, if you go to campgrounds and things like that where they have designated campsites, they're already going to have it set up that way. You know what I mean? There's already going to be, you don't have to think
this area's not going to flood. Yeah. Right.
But if you're in the woods and and you're not familiar with that area, you have to be very conscientious about looking around. I know that I've woken up with 6 inches of rain or 6 inches of water fucking creeping up into my tent, and everything's fucking soggy and a mess because I didn't build my campsite far enough away from the water. It's easy to make stupid mistakes, and when you're out in the middle of nowhere, a stupid mistake can really give you a bad time.
Right. Another thing to consider is building a shelter for your firewood. Setting up your plan for the next day. Again, if you're gonna, hey, I'm sleeping here and then I'm on the move in the morning going to my next place, well, that's a different approach. But if you're like, hey, I'm staying here waiting for help or staying here to start setting up something, then finding a place to, keep your firewood dry and that kind of stuff is also, having dry gear and dry fire starting equipment stuff is going to make a big difference in how long, and how successful your adventure is going to be.
Yeah. And this might sound stupid, but I know a lot of the time when I go out into the woods and I'm planning on being out there for a while, I'll even bring dry kindling in my pack. Because when you show up, you don't know what, especially if it rained the day before, you don't know what you're going to find. And you can burn wet wood, but you can't start a fire with wet wood. You have to have something dry with you. A lot of the time when I set up camp and get the fire going, afterwards I'll go find kindling in the area and bring it into the tent or the shelter with me. So when I get up in the morning, I can, get that fire going,
Right. And maybe even dry it out by the fire while you're, enjoying the fire you have.
Mm-hmm.
So you're ready to go in the morning, that kind of stuff.
Right.
Also, so you had mentioned, picking out where your campsite's going to be. So like I said, you want to be by a water source. Again, this matters of how long you plan on being there. But you want to be by a water source. You want to be where you can find food. You don't want to be traveling for forever. You want to be close to getting firewood. You want all these things available to you. But again, you also don't want to be in a game trail where freaking, Bambi's going to come running and crash into your tent because he didn't realize you just put it up.
Mm-hmm.
And, you just have to be a little bit aware of what's going on around you and paying attention.
Right.
But that's what I got. Yeah.
Now, when it comes to stealth camping, before we wrap up and just get back a little bit, it's really nice to have a fire by your tent, especially if it's cold.
Yes.
You really want to have one. But also, you could just not be a limp dick loser and not have a fire. It's okay.
And also how much money you spend on your sleeping bag could come into play here too.
If you have the right gear, you don't need a fire at all. And you can just sit out there in the fucking dark in the woods and nobody's going to see your ass. A fire is going to, even with the trees and the brush, a fire is going to be seen from a long way off. And it's okay. It's okay to camp out without a fire, especially if you're trying not to be found. That's all I get.
All right. And if you're looking for ideas and videos and pictures and things you could think about with shelters, check out, I know Sigma 3 has cool videos on YouTube. You might think about a Boy Scout handbook. You might think about joining the Boy Scouts if you're a youngin'. You might think about a SAS survival handbook. Has a lot of great ideas and inspiration there. Seeing what other people are doing can really, inspire or give you some good ideas. There's a lot of things like, using the pine branches and stuff like that, using sod, different things to, but you need to know your area and, what you can do, even using leaves to line on top of the branches that you have can add both insulation and, some protection from the wetness. So, check out the different things that people are doing and, get inspired is what I'd say. But the biggest way to learn is to go out and do. So if you enjoyed what you're hearing, you can leave us a review wherever you downloaded this podcast. You really enjoy it, you can go over to patreon.com/preppingbadass. We do have some cool patches that are going to come in sometime, I promise. And they will go out as soon as they're here. And I know I got about 5 of you guys that are out there waiting for yours. So we're working on it. And with that, stay safe, and we'll talk to you guys next week.
The Survival and Basic Badass podcast is a proud member of the Self-Defense Radio Network.
Planning a fishing trip shouldn't feel like a full-time job. With FishingBooker.com, you can find and book the perfect fishing trip within minutes. FishingBooker.com connects you with trusted fishing captains around the world. Booking is fast, easy, and secure, with access to verified customer reviews, loyalty rewards, and around-the-clock customer support. Everything you need to book with confidence is in one place. So head to fishingbooker.com and start planning your next fishing adventure today.